The police vehicles were already parked outside the iron gates when the first neighbor stepped onto their porch. Red and blue lights washed over the stone exterior of the Comas mansion, reflecting off tall windows that still glowed with interior light. It was nearly 4:30 a.m. in Comas, Utah, a quiet mountain town known for ranch land, ski traffic heading toward Park City, and little else. The kind of place where sirens usually meant a car accident on a dark road, not a full county response surrounding one of the largest private estates in Summit County. Dispatch logs would later show the call came in as a welfare check. A house staff member had reported something was wrong. No response from the owner. Phones going straight to voicemail. Doors locked from the inside. By sunrise, rumors had already begun. Because the mansion didn't belong to just anyone. It belonged to Evelyn Cade, known publicly as the Grief Author. A best-selling trauma and recovery writer whose books sat on shelves across the United States, the United Kingdom, and parts of Western Europe. She had spoken at conferences in New York City, Los Angeles, and London. She appeared calm, empathetic, controlled, someone people trusted during the worst moments of their lives. But locally, people spoke about her differently. Quietly. Because the Comas mansion was known only through whispers. When deputies finally entered through the service entrance, they found the interior perfectly intact. No broken glass. No forced locks. Coffee still warm in the kitchen. Laptop open in the library. A therapy session schedule still pinned to a corkboard. But Evelyn Cade was gone. So were 3 live-in program participants who had arrived the previous week for what was described as an intensive private grief retreat. No luggage missing. No vehicles gone. No signs of a struggle. Just absence. The mansion itself had been purchased nearly 7 years earlier under a holding company, something investigators would later trace through multiple financial layers. Publicly, it was marketed as a private writing retreat and emotional recovery center for high-profile clients. Celebrities, executives, and private citizens willing to pay for discretion. But records showed something else. Non-disclosure agreements required before entry. Devices surrendered for therapeutic isolation. Outside communication restricted during programs. Payments routed through private channels instead of traditional clinical billing systems. Officially, it wasn't illegal, but it wasn't normal. Detective Lauren Hale from Summit County had worked missing persons cases before, but something about the mansion felt wrong immediately. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't panic. It felt staged, controlled, like the house itself had been designed to remove people from the outside world. The reason for its creation, according to Evelyn's public interviews, was simple. Healing required isolation from modern noise. But investigators quickly noticed there were no licensed therapists on payroll, no medical documentation of treatment programs, only schedules, handwritten notes, and coded client identifiers. Built to silence, not reform. Former staff began surfacing once the news hit national outlets. Most refused on-record interviews, but several described strict routines inside the mansion. Phones locked away. Sleep schedules controlled, meals scheduled to the minute, group sessions focused on dependency on the guide, Evelyn herself. Once you crossed into the program, outside life blurred quickly. Severed entry. One former participant described losing track of days entirely. Windows were covered during certain sessions, clocks removed from private rooms, journaling required but journals collected nightly for reflection, review. Life inside followed rhythm, not freedom. Stone walls, routine, obedience. When investigators searched the basement level absent from the original architectural filings, they discovered rows of locked storage cabinets containing sealed envelopes, each labeled only with dates, some spanning multiple years. Inside were personal items, phones, watches, wallets, letters never mailed. Erased time. But the most disturbing discovery came from the surveillance server room. Cameras existed throughout the mansion: exterior, hallways, therapy rooms, private wings. But over 60% of stored footage was missing. Not corrupted, not damaged, deleted. Someone had controlled exactly what history remembered. By the third day of investigation, federal interest quietly entered the case. Financial investigators began tracking Evelyn's income streams: private transfers, international accounts, payments routed through shell companies tied to retreat services. Yet no confirmed fraud. Just layers of privacy. Meanwhile, neighbors reported seeing unfamiliar vehicles arriving late at night in the months leading up to the disappearance. Not police. Not medical. Black SUVs. Delivery vans with no branding. When detectives obtained a warrant to open a sealed interior office hidden behind a movable library shelf, they expected business records. Instead, they found client profiles, not medical histories, but psychological vulnerability assessments. Notes on family isolation, financial stability, emotional triggers, relationship dependency scores. This wasn't therapy documentation. It was selection criteria. And at the bottom of one locked drawer, they found a folder marked only with 3 initials, the same initials belonging to one of the missing retreat participants. Inside was a transfer authorization form. Not medical, not legal, but financial. Signed by Evelyn Cade, and dated 2 days before she vanished. Because whatever really happened inside the Comas mansion, someone had been preparing to move people, not help them. And whoever controlled that system wasn't finished yet. Detective Lauren Hale stared at the signature again under the fluorescent light of the Summit County evidence room. Evelyn Cade's handwriting was unmistakable, tight, precise, controlled. The date sat exactly 48 hours before the disappearance. Not weeks. Not months. Days. Someone had been planning a transition. But not the kind the mansion advertised. Within hours, federal investigators expanded their involvement. Financial crime units began mapping payment patterns tied to the Comas Mansion holding companies. Money didn't just come from retreat clients. It flowed through consulting firms, wellness foundations, and private development funds linked to luxury properties across Utah, Nevada, and parts of Western Europe. None of it was technically illegal, but it formed a network built on privacy, discretion, and isolation. Meanwhile, the 3 missing retreat participants became the center of the investigation. Their backgrounds showed something disturbingly consistent. Each had recently suffered a personal loss. Each had limited nearby family support. Each had signed multi-layer confidentiality agreements before entering the program. And each had transferred large sums of money into escrow accounts tied to Evelyn's corporate structure. The deeper investigators dug, the more the mansion began to look less like a retreat and more like a system. A system built on emotional dependency. Former participants began speaking anonymously through legal counsel. They described a progression. First, emotional safety. Then isolation. Then reinforcement that the outside world didn't understand them anymore. Over time, Evelyn positioned herself as the only stable anchor. No threats, no force, just control. And control doesn't leave fingerprints. By the end of the week, a new lead surfaced from a highway toll camera nearly 2 hours west of Comas. A dark SUV Regis, teared to a leased fleet management company, had passed through at 2:17 a.m. the night before the disappearance. Inside were 4 visible silhouettes. The timestamp matched the last recorded power spike from the mansion's generator system. Someone had left. The vehicle was eventually traced to a warehouse property outside Salt Lake City, leased through a third-party corporate intermediary. When law enforcement executed a search warrant, they found the building nearly empty except for boxed personal items labeled with first names only. Phones, clothing, journals. and a stack of unopened letters addressed to family members. No bodies. No direct evidence of harm. Just absence again. The case shifted from missing persons to potential organized coercion and financial exploitation. But proving it would require witnesses, and witnesses were disappearing from communication channels one by one. Not physically missing, just unreachable. Numbers disconnected. Emails deleted. Social accounts wiped clean. As if someone was helping them start over somewhere else. Then came the break. A junior financial analyst flagged a recurring transaction tied to the transfer form investigators found in Evelyn's office. The destination account wasn't foreign. It was domestic, linked to a remote property purchase in rural Colorado under yet another holding company. When federal agents arrived, they found a partially furnished compound. Fresh food in refrigerators. Bedding recently used. Security cameras active. But empty. Except for one thing. A desktop computer left powered on in an upstairs office. Inside were encrypted logs showing scheduled transitions, names replaced with client codes, locations marked only by coordinates, payment confirmations attached to each entry, and one final note typed into a private message system. Stability requires distance. Investigators issued nationwide alerts. Financial blocks went into place. Property networks were frozen. But Evelyn Cade was already gone. 3 months later, the Camas mansion still stood, sealed under legal authority. Media attention faded. Lawsuits began forming quietly. Survivors worked through attorneys to regain financial access and reconnect with families. No official criminal charges were ever finalized. Not because investigators stopped looking, but because the system Evelyn built never required traditional crime to function. It relied on consent shaped by grief, on isolation disguised as healing, on people choosing to disappear from lives they no longer recognized. The final confirmed activity tied to Evelyn's network came from a banking login routed through a coastal city in southern Europe. After that, nothing. No confirmed sightings. No verified accounts. The mansion eventually sold through court order. New owners renovated it. Repainted walls, removed the basement storage cabinets, updated security systems. But one architectural feature remained untouched, the hidden office behind the library. Because even during renovation, contractors reported the same thing. The room felt watched, not haunted, not supernatural, just preserved. Like a place built for secrets, still holding them. The Camas mansion never officially closed any case. It simply stopped producing answers. Because some systems don't collapse when exposed. They scatter and rebuild somewhere quieter. If this story stayed with you, you're not ready for the next one. Subscribe so you don't miss it.